What am I to do?
Welcome to RazorBranding Podcast with Jackie Rougeau. To learn more about how to improve your brand, visit brandrougeau.com.
We're in the home stretch, y'all. We only have a few more entrepreneurs left to talk to today on National Entrepreneur Day. And that's what this whole podcast series is about. So I hope that you've been able to learn some things, get some insights. Our next guest is going to blow your mind. Not only is she an entrepreneur in her own right and building her own business, and there's so many stories there, but the work she does with other entrepreneurs, I think, is just the height of being a go-giver in terms of giving back to others. So please welcome Monica Rougeau.
Thank
Hey,
you,
Monica.
Jackie.
How
Hey,
are
Jackie.
you?
I'm
Hey.
great. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. We were talking a little bit before, and I think that it's some of that, probably that entire conversation bears repeating, and it won't be nearly as good as it just was a minute ago. But walk me through how your own entrepreneurial journey happened, and then I want to segue into how you work with other entrepreneurs now.
Absolutely. So it happened by accident, actually. Spent a long time in corporate healthcare, operations and finance, and just seasons of life and circumstances in the industry, decided to step away, not sure what in the heck I was going to do. And over a few months of discernment, realized that I missed the people, reflecting on what was it that I was good at, what was I passionate about. And lo and behold, circumstances led me to becoming certified as a coach, a leadership coach, focusing specifically on that. And that's where it just continued to fuel my passion. Decided, oh, let's make a business out of this. And here we are today, 5 years later.
Isn't that amazing? 5 years. Does it feel like 5 minutes?
Yes, in many aspects it does. And in some, it's like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for so long. I should be so much further along.
It's also 5 decades. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to your own business that you've built, you've also written a book.
Yes, I have. Yes, about servant leadership, kind of past experiences, lessons learned, and how to hopefully not repeat some of those that I've made.
So without going into details, if you're not comfortable with that, tell us some of the big, I was calling them earlier, expensive lessons that you've learned.
Yes. Well, going into it early on, it was, in my healthcare career about leadership, I did what I thought I knew, only responding to what I saw within my blinders, right? I had no outside awareness of what true leadership looked like, what it was, how you do it. So I was just replicating what I saw in front of me. And it wasn't working. It was very toxic. We were moving a financial needle, but it wasn't sustainable. And it was several years into it, after some life circumstances, health issues, that I realized something needs to change. And that's where I started pivoting and looking into becoming that true servant leader. And that's where my success really grew from there. And it was a lot less stressful. So I'm like, there might be something to this thing.
Right. Absolutely. And so where in your entrepreneurial journey did you transition into, after you've become a coach and you're starting to work with others, into doing the peer-to-peer groups that I've been able to meet with and guest speak at? Where did that come from? I mean, is it kind of, sometimes you look around and think, okay, not only am I in charge of my own destiny, but now I've got to be in charge of all these other people too.
Right. It's organic. I was just passionate about helping people to not repeat some of the same mistakes, in feeding people to the wolves, that they're stepping into leadership roles that they're not prepared for, whether it's through their own doing or someone else's, right? And just having this true desire to want to support them along that journey, and not just checking it off of a box to say, I attended a conference, now I'm a leader, and now I know how to do everything perfectly. That doesn't work. It's an ongoing, lifelong process. So that's kind of where my niche has fallen into. And I got connected with Heidi with the SBDC, who invited me to start facilitating their peer-to-peer. And it's been a love affair ever since, because it's just been a perfect fit to be able to support them in various aspects.
I think about the different people that I've met in my entrepreneurial journey through CEO roundtables or peer to peers. And I feel like there's kind of two groups. There's that sort of bully boot camp kind of drill sergeant instructor, which you're the exact opposite of because you
Thank you.
love and nurture and assist. But do you ever just look at them and think, how do you not get this? Come on, people, let's move through it.
Yes, it can be frustrating. And that's where I have to step back, Jackie, and realize, okay, they're in a different place. And
Right.
I have to meet them where they are and start, inviting them along, because bullying them along is not going to get them where they need to be in the long run. And we're trying to steer away from being that bully buller, right?
Right.
So yeah, I've been accused of being that nurturing, mothering hen, and I used to shy away from that.
No, embrace
But
it.
now I realize, people need this,
Yes.
especially for entrepreneurs. We are beaten up on a constant basis, and they just need that ally in their corner, helping them to see that it's going to be okay and see what that potential is, and helping them to find that path toward that.
Right, right, absolutely. As you look at and maybe not one specific peer group you've worked with, but over the landscape of all the entrepreneurs you've worked with, do you see some common threads amongst them, either positive or negative, or is everyone just so vastly different?
Well, I think, they're uniquely different based on the human, but the commonality is the your common traps of the imposter syndrome, feeling like you're not good enough, second guessing yourself, the fear of success. I didn't realize that that's a real thing, Jackie. It really is. And so I think that's a common thread in just varying degrees depending on the person.
Right, right. No, it's big challenges. I'm always honored when you bring me in to talk to your groups. I love it, and I always feel like they have this kind of similar deer in the headlights look
Yeah.
for a little while.
Yes.
It's like, oh, I'm not ready for this next thing. And I remember that feeling. I very well remember, just being a regular office worker, and then all of a sudden embarking on the entrepreneurial journey and thinking, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. It's a whole different ball game. And, we talk about that from the leadership perspective, that so often people are promoted up into positions that they're not equipped for because they're so good at the skill, in the task. And then they are promoted into a leadership position, which requires a totally different set of skills. And if they're not prepared and supported, they're going to fail. You're setting them up for failure. And what I love about what you do in supporting the SBDC roundtables is that we're helping to equip these entrepreneurs, which is requiring a totally different skill set than what they were accustomed to in the past. Because a lot of the ones we're dealing with are these solopreneurs or the people who are stepping out of careers to say, I'm going to start this business off of my pet passion, or just this idea that they had and want to give it a go. But there's so many aspects about being an entrepreneur that many times we weren't even aware of. And
Right.
so having people like you to support that endeavor, to provide those resources, is such a gift.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I think it's on brand and on mission to be able to give back like that. I've often thought, and I've heard a few people kind of talk around it today. So I'm curious about your take on it. That you can't just hand somebody a company and add water. They're an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship has to be earned because you've got to be in the field of battle and get weathered a little bit. Now, either that's good analogy, or it's just because I've been watching Yellowstone lately. It could go either way. But so what do you think? Can you just add water and be an entrepreneur? Or do we have to go through some of these expensive lessons and challenges to really find that entrepreneurship within ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the rare person that you can just add water to. For most of us, it's going to be, it's an evolution, a constant progression, and a work on yourself. Yes, it does require a certain aspect of your DNA to have that within you. I don't know if there's a certain genotype that definitely says in your DNA that you're an entrepreneur, but there's definite qualities, that lend itself to being that healthy entrepreneur, that spirit of not giving up, figuring out a problem solver, that ferocious go-getter in whatever area that they're passionate about. And just that constant learner. So as an entrepreneur, you should always be developing yourself until the day you die.
Right. It's so funny because coming at it from a completely different direction, you hit on all the same points that I keep hearing over and over today. It's about being a lifelong learner. It's about having passion for what you do. It's about believing in yourself enough that you're willing to keep trying even after you get knocked down a couple times.
Mhm.
What other either skills or attitudes or life experience do you think people can bring to the process of entrepreneurship? Any other areas where it's like, oh, you've got to have this quality or you need to think this way to ultimately be successful?
Jackie, I really feel like emotional intelligence is that dark hole that a lot of people don't step into.
Mhm.
And it's the one area that could make or break you because, as an entrepreneur, we're in business to do business with human beings.
Right.
And if we don't understand human beings and ourselves, then we're not going to be as successful as we potentially could be. And that's usually an area that we start working on first with many of my clients is let's take a look at you. Let's understand you. And then let's understand the other people who you might be interacting with, whether it's your peers, your employees, and or your clients. Oh, so sorry.
It's okay. See, you're a busy entrepreneur yourself.
Forgot to silence that. So yeah, emotional intelligence, I think, is a huge thing that is often overlooked that is so important to someone's success.
I think that is brilliant, and no one else has brought that up today. And so you would think, this many hours in, we start hearing the same answers, and yet here you are with something fresh. How does someone develop their emotional intelligence? Where do they go to build that emotional IQ?
Well, they can call me, of course, but outside of that, spend some time in silence. And in today's society, I think that is a hard ask for many people, but it's a crucial element
Mhm.
to be able to center yourself and just start thinking. Take 10 minutes and dissect a situation or an experience that you had and look at it from all the different angles and see what wisdom you can gain from that by what went well, what didn't go so well, how could we do this differently or better. And that's an aspect of developing your emotional intelligence.
Right. No, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think it's fascinating. For so many years, it seemed like the people who ran businesses tried to stay as far away from emotion and intelligence as possible. There was a playbook, and I follow the book. I mean that sarcastically, but also seriously. But you look at the companies that were built; it was all very buttoned up, coat and tie. We do it this
Mhm.
way. This is the right way. There's no other way. And it feels like in the past few decades, we've moved from that. We don't focus as much on those 500 fortune businesses, but we look at the other 5 million. And it's now about finding a path, not the right path, but the right path for you. How do
Absolutely.
you guide people through those choices and helping them understand how they should evaluate options and make decisions? Because so much of entrepreneurship is deciding things.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I often tell my clients is that you're going to find your success in your uniqueness. So, what is it about you that sets you apart? I've learned that from you. And, start dissecting that because it's going to start feeding into where your passions. And that's what's going to continue to motivate you to take the needed actions that you have to take to keep your business moving in the right direction, right? So let's take a look at what are you passionate about? What are you good at? Where are your skills? All these things, and start carving out your niche and your unique way of progressing forward, because we might be looking at the same end goal, but how we get there could be totally different. And if you're feeling like you're pushing a boulder the entire time, you're not going to be as effective. But if we can find that path for you to get to that end result, that's a lot smoother and healthier for you, then that's what we should be choosing. And so we just look at all the different angles of a client situation and help them to discover their own path.
Right. Where do you go to recharge and refresh and find that quiet time to help you not just grow your own business, but help other people grow theirs?
Gosh, so I have several different things. I spend quiet time in the morning before the household wakes up. That's my quiet time. And I go on retreats myself, whether they're spiritual retreats or leadership retreats. I do that for myself, as well as having my own coach to help me have that carved out, designated time for myself to process and to think deeply, which again, I think in today's society tries to deter us from thinking deeply.
Oh, for sure. Everything's supposed to be absorbed in 5-second sound
Right.
bites. You make a great point right there about a coach having
Mhm.
her own coach. All too often, there seems to be this overnight success. Now I'm at the top. I don't have to do anything to stay there. Kind of mentality pushed through the media. And what I'm always trying to remind people is, you know, who works out the hardest? It's not the high school athlete or the college athlete. It's the professional athlete, and they're already pro, but they're
Yeah.
always under fear of being cut. They're always having to continue to work and strive to stay at the top of their game amongst other professional athletes who are trying to stay at the top of their game. And so I think that's valuable to remind entrepreneurs that once they've got the business and the business has reached success, 1 year mark, 5 year mark, 10 year mark, they have to keep growing and keep learning. So, what direction do you send them in? Is it SBDC classes? Is it reading books? Is it what is it? What do they do?
All of the above. Again, it depends on the person, what's going to fit for them, what will they absorb, right? So if they're a book reader, I have tons of books that we'll recommend. If they're a podcast listener, then we'll recommend plenty of podcasts. If they prefer going to workshops, so find what works for you. And as far as the modality, and then what type of content skills development do you need to move into? And so focus on that. I'm a big proponent of taking baby steps. Don't jump into the deep end head first without looking. Take those slow, sustainable steps that's going to keep moving you forward without overwhelming you.
Right, right. Well, and I think you make a great point because it's through the lifelong learning that we're able to continue to grow and evolve each of our businesses. You know, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it feels to me, can't just be in the box. You know, you look at IBM or Apple or Coke or any of those businesses, who they were when they first started is not who they are today. They've had to
Right.
grow and evolve as their market grows and evolves.
Mhm.
So when you're speaking to the peer-to-peer groups and your own clients, what do you feel like comes first? Does the market change and the company catches up? Or does the company evolve and pulls the market with them? Or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both, Jackie, because I think 2020 proved that to so many of us that we have to evolve based on where society is and market indicators, but we still have to be true to who we are and grow that aspect of our unique element that's going to fit to that target demographic that is going to be in alignment with what we're doing, right? I would not encourage anyone to mold themselves into something that they're not.
Right.
What I encourage you to do is to continue to develop and form that unique essence of you and keep honing that.
Right. No, absolutely. And I mean, that's it because it all has to come down to authenticity. You have to be
Absolutely.
real. And so, to me, from a marketing standpoint, it's about really knowing your customer base and really knowing what they need so that we can adapt as their needs change. I see so many entrepreneurs just kind of in this tunnel with blinders on saying, nope, this is who we are. This is what we do. We're not changing. And I'm thinking, okay, you stay on that path, but it's got a dead end ahead of it. You're not
Absolutely.
coming to an intersection. You're coming
Mhm.
to a wall.
Absolutely.
So, what is, and we have 1 minute left. What is the
Okay.
advice that you give to entrepreneurs when they're starting their journey? Where do you tell them to begin, to think, to do, to assess? Where do they go?
Normally, whenever they come to me first, Jackie, I tell them to stop. Um, and doesn't make any sense at all. But there's this perception that we have to go, 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 go all the time. And it can become very overwhelming, and it doesn't allow you the space to really think, like I said, think deeply and find your path and find the solutions that are unique to you. So just providing them permission to stop and think and breathe, and let's start sorting things out and creating a strategic plan for you to move forward.
I think that is so wise, because taking that moment to pause and not just try to fill the space around them, but really assess. So many people that I see just jump into it, and they end up spending a lot of time and a lot of money, and a lot of frustration because they weren't properly prepared. So I think
Exactly.
that's great advice, to have them pause for a minute and figure out really where they're heading, so that they can get a map. Otherwise, they wander lost.
Exactly.
Yeah, that
They
is
might
awesome.
eventually find their way, but it's
Maybe
to a lot of
sometimes.
heartache.
And sometimes they end up spending a lot of money to figure out they weren't even on the right continent. They were
Big-
so far from reality.
right.
Monica, thank you so much for your time and your insight and the work that you do in giving back to our entrepreneurial community. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate you.
No, thank you. And to everybody else who's watched and listened, we hope you've enjoyed it. Stick around. We've got a few more amazing entrepreneurs to talk to, and hopefully you'll continue to learn new things. Thanks.
Bye.
When the day is through.